Have you ever felt that you love too much and suffer for it? Have you been waiting for messages that never arrive, trying to change someone who doesn't want to change, or believing that the problem is you? The truth is hard, but liberating what you call love often is just disguised attachment. What no one tells you is that there is a way of loving with more freedom, peace, and lightness without turning stone, without becoming hostage. This is what Stoic philosophers have discovered over 2,000 years ago, and today it can be the key to turning their way of loving, and especially to love oneself. Get ready, what you will hear here goes against everything they taught you about relationships. It will seem strange at first, maybe even uncomfortable, but if you have the courage to stay until the end, you will leave this video with clarity that can change not only your way of loving, but your whole emotional life. This is the Stoic secret to loving without suffering, and today it will be revealed. The biggest trap in relationships is to want to control who the other is. We hope the person thinks like us, reacts like us, and loves like us. But this is not love, it is projection. Stoicism reminds us that we have no power over others, just about our attitudes. When we free the other from the obligation to complete us, suffering begins to disappear. To accept the freedom of the other is not to conform to everything. It is understanding that we cannot change anyone, we can only decide if we want to be there. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power only about your mind." This is already a lot. Instead of trying to change the other, learn to strengthen yourself inside. True love is not born of necessity, but of choice. And conscious choices exist only when there is freedom. If you feel you need to stifle, control, or test the other, you may not be loving, just be afraid. And fear never creates deep roots. Many people say, "But if I don't control, I'll lose." The truth is that if something needs to be controlled to stay, it was never yours. What is real remains. What is forced tires. Stoicism invites us to replace control with confidence, not in the other, but in itself. From this perspective, love ceases to be suffering and becomes an exercise of presence. You choose to be, not for need, but out of tune. And if the other also chooses, the healthy bond is born. No handcuffs, no charge, just connection. To love someone is not to make them mold to their desires. It is recognizing the beauty of who he is, even when it challenges his expectations. In Stoicism, acceptance is not passivity, it is wisdom. It is seeing the other with lucidity and deciding, I want to walk with him like this. This mutual freedom reduces suffering because it breaks with the illusion of control. You stop expecting perfection, and it values reality with everything it is. Peace in relationships begins when you no longer need to win, just live. Love suffering is often born of the difference between what we expect and what happens. We create unreal expectations, imagine the other as ideal, and when he shows his humanity, we disappoint ourselves. But the mistake is not in the other, it is in the illusion we have created about it. Epictetus said, "It's not the things that disturb us, but the opinion we have about them." Expecting someone to understand us without speaking, love us without fails, and save us from loneliness is to demand the impossible. And to demand the impossible is to open the door to constant pain. As Stoical wisdom calls us to live with your feet on the ground. This means learning to look at each other as it really is, not how you want them to be. When you accept that the other is flawed, as you are, love becomes lighter and more real. The expectation is an invisible imprisonment, and we often don't even realize that we are inside her. We expect messages, promises, gestures, and we forget that no one is obliged to always serve us. When you learn to sustain yourself emotionally, expectations lose strength. Of course, it is healthy to wish affection, respect, and presence. But when this becomes a constant demand, it is no longer love and becomes charging. The difference between desire and necessity is in your autonomy. The more whole you are, the less you will need to charge. Healthy relationships are born from the balance between will and not depending on. When you understand that you can be happy with or without each other, you become freer and also more desirable. Because nothing is lighter than being with someone who does not suffocate or annul themselves. The Stoic base not to suffer in relationships is this: replace expectation with presence. Instead of waiting for the other to serve your costume, see what they really offer. And then choose not from lack, but of clarity. There is a romanticized idea that suffering for love is beautiful. But Stoicism shows another truth: prolonged suffering because of someone reveals an internal imbalance. And where there is imbalance, there is no wisdom. Seneca taught that we should cultivate the soul like a garden. If you plant love, but reap abandon, something needs to be reviewed. It is not the other's fault, but it is your responsibility to realize that it is feeding a pain that can be avoided. Pain is part of life, but suffering forever by someone who does not value you is a waste of energy. Stoics invite us to look at this pain with honesty and ask, why am I allowing it? The answer is almost always within us. We often confuse attachment with love, but attachment is born of fear. Love, on the contrary, is born of freedom. If your relationship brings more anguish than peace, maybe it's not love, maybe it's attachment, habit, fear of being alone. Stoic philosophy teaches us that inner peace must be the priority. If someone is constantly taking this peace, Stoic courage is necessary. Cut the cycle, face the void, and rebuild. Not to prove anything to anyone, but out of respect for yourself. You deserve love that builds, not that weakens. And love only builds when there is balance. Relationships are not war fields, they are gardens. If you only find thorns, you may be in the wrong place. Lucidity frees, and lucid love is the only one that doesn't hurt. Loving with conscience is an act of courage. It is to say, I choose to stay, but I know if you need it. Suffering only sets in when you forget that you have this choice. Stoic does not suffer for someone who does not want him. He withdraws with dignity and self-love. Stoics believe that true freedom begins when you become enough for yourself. This does not mean living isolated or denying love, but does not depend on the other to feel whole. Suffering decreases when you do not deliver the power to destroy you. Epictetus said, as long as you depend on others to be happy, you will be in their hands. Relationships are made of two people who walk together, not someone who carries the other. Emotional self-sufficiency is the basis for loving lightly. We often expect someone to complete us, save us, or heal us. But this responsibility is nobody but you. When you find your source of peace in you, the other's love becomes a bonus, no need. This completely transforms the relationship. You do not charge the other for what you have already found in you. It does not require constant attention, does not implode when you feel ignored, does not panic with silence. Because your emotional base is inside, not out. Self-sufficiency also protects you from manipulation. Who depends on the other to be happy, often accepts crumbs. But whoever sufficient does not fear loneliness and therefore chooses with more wisdom. This is a silent power that Stoic people cultivated, and it is a power that you can develop step by step. Start by assuming responsibility for your well-being. Then observe when you try to make the other load your weights. Finally, Learn to hear yourself before requiring the other to understand you. Relationships without suffering are born when two whole people meet. When love is not medicine, it is celebration. When you stop expecting the other to save you and start walking beside him with balance and serenity. Stoic philosophy is straightforward: what you allow, you teach. When you accept disrespect, indifference, or emotional abandonment, you are telling the other, this is enough for me. And over time it becomes standard and becomes pain. Seneca reminds us it is part of healing the desire to be healed. That is, suffering persists when you choose to remain where there is pain. Relationships don't change because you can handle everything. Change when you impose boundaries with wisdom. Many people confuse patience with submission, but the Stoic patience is not accepting everything silent. It is clearly observing, acting firmly, and going out with dignity if necessary. Love without limit is not love itself abandoned. You cannot change the other, but it can change what you accept. This begins with little things: an aggressive comment, a manipulative silence, a lack of support. Each time you ignore, you are teaching the other to repeat. Stoics defend self-knowledge as a shield. If you know what you deserve, you don't accept less. And if someone insists on giving you less, you move away, not out of pride, but out of self-love. The pain is not romantic. It is a sign that something needs to change. If you are suffering in silence, believing that this is love, review your concepts. Love does not need to hurt. And when it hurts constantly, it may not be love, maybe it's a cycle of fear. Stoic does not remain in destructive cycles. He chooses peace. The choice to stop tolerate what hurts is the first step for healthy relationships. Who really loves you, respects your limits, and who requires you to accept everything to continue. Do not want a partner, want a submissive mirror. Break this cycle with courage. Stoicism does not invite us to be cold. On the contrary, he teaches us to feel lucidly. Loving does not mean losing reason, and being rational does not mean not to love. The secret is in balance, where emotion does not dominate and reason does not repress. We often plunge into relationships with such intensity that we forget to think. We justified everything with, but I love, even when we are being injured. Stoics show us that lucid love is the one that hard and less hurts. Marcus Aurelius said, if you're out of your control, accept. If it's inside, transform. This is the key. Feeling is natural, but staying stuck with destructive emotions is a choice. Love doesn't have to blind you. He can make you more conscious. When you learn to observe your feelings honestly, without denying or drowning in them, you get something rare: emotional dominion. And with this domain comes peace. You still love, but don't get lost. You feel, but don't destroy yourself. Stoicism teaches the art of moderation. No love too much that chokes, no reason too much that cools. A meeting point between the heart and the mind. Because loving with balance is choosing consciously and living with serenity. Most conflicts in relationships are born when emotion runs over the reason. Jealous, insecurity, anger, all this can be felt, but it can also be guided. Stoic breathes before reacting, note before accusing, understand before judging. This balance gives you power. You stop acting on impulse, learn to talk calmly, and especially, he learns to leave when it takes, without drama, without guilt, without grudge, just with the certainty that your peace is worth more. Insisting on something that has already shown that it does not work is the shortest way to suffering. In Stoicism, we learn to recognize when reality has already given all signs. If love needs to be begged, then it's no longer love, it's illusion. Epictetus said, Happiness does not consist of obtaining what we want, but to want what we have. When someone does not value you, does not respect you, or do not choose you, the greatest proof of self-love is to stop insisting. You don't have to convince anyone that you deserve to be loved. To love is to offer, not to beg. It is being present, not to nullify. When love is true, it flows. Even in difficulties, there is respect, dialogue, and reciprocity. When there is only effort on one side, it is not a partnership, it is lonely sacrifice. The Stoic people observe the signs of life. If something requires constant struggle to exist, it may not be to exist. This goes for relationships. If you are always trying to prove your value, you are in the wrong place. The love that makes you feel small is not love. There is wisdom to know the time to release. Not for weakness, but for clarity. When you insist beyond the limit, you lose yourself. And no relationship is worth this loss. Stoic moves away without hatred, just with awareness that it has done everything it could. Relationships flow when there is tuning, and this tuning cannot be forced. When there is lightness, you know. When there is constant weight, you also know. The secret is to have the courage to recognize and act. Peace lies in the choice to let go what doesn't take you on. Release is not fail. It is free to release both. It is making room for something more true, lighter, more real. You deserve a love that wants you whole, not that accepts you in half. And you only find that who stops insisting on what doesn't welcome you. Not every conflict needs words. Not every pain needs to be explained. In Stoicism, silence is a tool of power. When you stop justifying the unjustifiable, to argue with those who do not listen, you protect yourself and preserves your energy. Seneca taught us, sometimes silent is wisdom. In relationships, silence may be the best answer to those who try to manipulate, disrespect, or confuse. Talking too much in times of anger or pain only increases chaos. Stoic knows the amount of the pause. To silence is not to run away, it is to choose the right time to act. Sometimes the greatest strength is not to retaliate, not to explain, just observe. Silence connects you with your inner truth, while the noise only removes you from it. When you learn to silence, you find that a lot is resolved on your own. Time reveals what haste tries to hide. Silence shows who really wants and who is only for convenience. Don't be afraid to be quiet. It is in silence that the truth echoes. Silence also shows limits. He says, "I don't accept that." He imposes respect without shouts. It is an answer without violence, but firmly. Instead of wearing out of endless discussions, Stoic chooses to preserve its peace with the power of the unique. But it is important to remember silence is not omission. It is strategic choice. When it comes from clarity, he heals. When it comes from fear, he gets sick. The secret is to use it with conscience, and knowing that you don't have to say anything to show that you respect yourself. In a noisy world, silence is revolution. And in relationships, it can be the beginning of a new phase, more mature, lighter, more real. Who silences with wisdom responds with greatness. And who hears this silence understands what words do not reach. One of the pillars of Stoicism is self-responsibility. Instead of blaming the world, we look inside. This is also true for relationships. What you attract has a lot to do with what you vibrate. And what you tolerate. Repeat yourself. If you do not value yourself, tend to attract people who do not value either. Not for punishment, but because your energy field is disorganized. The first step to change this is to raise your own ruler. Loving yourself in depth changes everything around. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be pleased to look foolish. That is, have the courage to move away from standards that seem normal but hurt you. Do not accept little because everyone accepts. You deserve it a lot, and you will only have it when you stop accepting little. Relationships are mirrors. The way the other treats you often reflects how it is about. If you neglect yourself, the other neglects it too. But if you respect yourself, it requires reciprocity. And respect becomes the main language of the relationship. This is not about perfection, but about consciousness. When dealing with love, you teach the other to do the same. And if he doesn't want to, that's fine, you'll know how to leave. Self-responsibility is the antidote to victimism in relationships. You cannot control what the other does, but you can choose what it allows. And this choice changes everything. Stoic does not regret it acts. He does not expect the other to change, he changes direction. And with that, it attracts new possibilities. The Stoic question is simple: what is in me allowing this? The answer is often difficult, but liberating. When you change your posture, the world changes your answer. Relationships are no longer arrests and become mirrors of evolution. Stoic love is not cold, it is deep. He is born of clarity, grows in freedom, and flourish in respect. It is not based on promises, but on presence. It does not require perfection, but true. And most importantly, it starts inside you. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes colorful with the colors of his thoughts." When you cultivate thoughts of self-love, respect, and balance, your relationship becomes a reflection of this. Lightness comes when you stop abandoning yourself. Loving the other begins with the act of loving oneself, not as an ego, but as a root. Those who love each other does not beg, do not decrease, do not get lost. Loves with delivery, but also with limits. And this maturity is the greatest gift you can give and receive. Stoic love is not a prison, it is a way, a path where two walk together, but without carrying themselves, where there is partnership, not dependence, where there is listening, not judgment, and where there is peace, even in difficulties. You deserve this love, but it starts inside. Before looking for someone who loves you like this, be that person. Plant in itself what you want to reap in the other. And over time, what is true will come naturally. In Stoicism, love is a conscious choice. It is not blind passion, it is clear vision. And in this clarity, the peace they seek. Stoic love does not promise fairy tale finals, but it offers early lighter, more real lives. If you have gotten here, take this to you: the secret to a relationship without suffering is not in the other. It's on you. Love wisely, live with lightness, and never forget your peace will always be more valuable than any passing passion. Now tell me, how many times have you lost yourself trying to be everything to someone who has never been able to see your value? How many sleepless nights, heavy silences, and constant doubts have you ever carried believing this was love? Perhaps today you have realized that loving with balance, conscience, peace, it is possible. But it begins with a decision not to abandon yourself anymore, of not accepting less than what nourishes your soul and respects your essence. What you heard here is not just ancient philosophy. It is a call to transform your emotional life now. Are you ready to love yourself more? Are you willing to stop insisting where there is only absence? Think with love. Your answers can change your story. And if this content has made sense to you, if you touched your heart or gave you clarity, you subscribe now on the channel, activate the bell, and come with us on this journey of conscience, lucidity, and love with wisdom. Because here you learn to love without losing yourself.